Welcome to Triumph or RDB Speaks, where we explore the intersections of trauma, resilience, and professional success for Black professionals. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Xenia Barnes, and today we have an extraordinary conversation with the Dr. Carrie Young-McWilliams. Dr. Young-McWilliams is a passionate advocate for social justice and educational equity who broke generational curses to become the first in her family to attend college. Her journey from Mississippi to New England and back home again is a powerful testament to the cost of integrity in corrupt systems. As a dean of students who earned her doctorate from the University of Sarasota and trained at Harvard Urban Leaders Institute, Dr. Young McWilliams thought her credentials will open doors. Instead, she discovered that in education, like in corporate America, merit often takes a backseat to politics, connections, and biases. But here's where her story took a profound turn. When she returned to Mississippi, finally, among her people in a 99% Black district, she encountered the same corruption and systematic racism, just wearing a different face. But she did what she did next, and the framework she developed to combat racism and education makes this conversation you don't want to miss. So, Dr. Carrie McYoung-Williams is the CEO of Young McWilliams Education Consulting Services and the creator of Serve and Cure frameworks for education transformation. Her chapter in Triumph in the Trenches, Volume 2, is titled A Journey of Integrity and Empowerment. I would like to welcome the Dr. Carrie McYoung-Williams to the stage. And boy, this is going to be great. All right, so I already told you all that I was bringing a phenomenal co-host, and so I am bringing to the stage right now none other than Dr. Carrie Young-McWilliams. Welcome to Triumph with RDB Speaks.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for the invitation and taking the time out to do this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So just give us a real quick overview of like what has your day been like today? Because you are a woman that wears many hats,
I
exhibiting many things. But what has today looked like for you?
Today I have had on my advocacy hat. So today I've worked with two of my clients who are minors, and been advocating for them in the realm of education and
Okay.
ensuring that their educational rights are protected and that they get their due education under IDEA, which, as we all know, is under attack under this current administration. But nonetheless, they reside in a state that still has a very stringent, regulations and procedures that are allowing them to still flourish under their um, academic programs as prescribed by their pupil placement teams. So that's what today was filled with.
Listen, that sounds mighty heavy. But as a former educator myself as well, I understand like how important and how detrimental it is to make sure that we are advocating for those who may not know how to advocate for themselves and or are just like in a space where they're stuck and they feel like their voices are being muted. So thank you, and I commend you for continuing to do that work. So before we jump into your chapter of Triumph in the Trenches, I want you to share I want you to share a bit about like what got you into doing this work.
Um, the work of advocacy, what really got me into it is that, growing up in the South, I'm
Mhm.
a Mississippi native. My mom was a civil rights worker,
Mhm.
and so I grew up around advocacy, around social justice work. And in the South, of course, through the Black church, that was the hub for meetings and social action requests. People would come from all over the community and convene. And I just grew up as a child, tagging along with either my mother or my grandmother to these meetings, and just hearing like what the next move was and why. It was
Mhm.
always a why behind it. Why do we have to, march? Why do we have to show up at the council meeting? Why do we have to um, put an injunction here? So just hearing that verbiage and seeing the fight that really carried on, that was just part of life.
Mhm.
It was just the way. And as I grew up, I had this fascination with the law
Okay.
and how the law can be manipulated to harm the public as well as to help the public,
Mhm.
but yet it's something so stoic and so silent. So that has always just been a fascination of mine. And I married that with education, in that my grandparents were big on education because it was denied from them. They had to leave and go and work and help with the house. So they did not finish their formal educations. And I say formal because they were very educated women, let me tell you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so, um, and so driving those two forces together, I knew that with an education, I had a better advantage. And seeing the passion behind them wanting to see me matriculate through school and get as far as I could get as a young adult, along with that fight of making sure that everyone has what they need to survive and live a life as intended, right?
Mhm.
So I married those two things together, and to this day I work my social justice piece through education, whether I'm educating people in the community or whether I am fighting for the rights for someone to be educated.
Awesome. That is amazing, and thank you so much for sharing that. It makes me think of where we are today, and just to think back. You mentioned your mom, you mentioned your grandma, your grandmother. It just makes me continuously think that how could we be so far advanced but yet still so far behind, and so that that brings us to the topic, right, of breaking cycles and building barriers. And you talked a lot about that inside your chapter in our book Triumph, in our anthology Triumph in the Trenches, both volume 1 and 2. But I want to dig a little deeper. I want to dig into, you mentioned about in your chapter about the powerful declaration of how your story began and breaking the cycles in the generational curse, and you being the first person to go to graduate from college within your family, although times look different now from when they were when our parents were growing up, right? So
Right.
as educated as they still were, like the difference of how society norms and the expectations of what they had access to was much different from where you are now. And
Absolutely.
as someone, as someone has trained and completed studies at Harvard, and you've earned your doctorate degree, and you, despite everything, and I don't like to say despite, right, because our
Mhm.
challenges are what makes us. I feel
Mhm.
more so it's not about a despite, but you challenge in the
Mhm.
face. You
Right.
challenge those barriers in the face of everything that was put, the roadblocks that were put in front. You still figure out a way around that. And for so many women of color, especially like now with what's going on,
Mhm.
I want to tap in and I want you to explain a little bit more about how women who are so educated and are still being overlooked, and how the challenges that are still arriving. So what does it look like, or how do you feel we can make a difference within the reality of breaking generational curses that don't guarantee that the system will accept us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something we struggle with every day,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And we'll never know why fate has decided that Black women are the ones to carry this, but we do. Um, I will say I do definitely stand on the wings of my ancestors and
Mhm.
give them their homage, because even though I get the formal acceptable from society education.
Mm-hmm.
It's that wisdom that is not taught in the brick and mortar schools that they bring to the table that make us as Black women stellar. And that's what can't be captured. That's the shadow force that the white culture fights against.
Mm-hmm.
um because you can't capitalize on it unless you have us in the room and you're using us to do that type of work, or speak in a way and move throughout a situation in a way that they can't.
Mm-hmm.
It angers. That's the anger that you see that comes up and starts to push us out on whatever reason they can come up with, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with one of my mentees right now that's being quote unquote counseled out of her particular position as an administrator in education. They found a way to circumvent,
Mm-hmm.
a contract, and everything in it is wrong. But then you get to this crossroad of, do I do I sabotage my career and my reputation against this entity of this municipality, or do I take the buyout or the crumbs I say they're offering me and leave with my reputation intact?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what so many of us are faced with, signing these do not disclose, non-disparaging clauses. I mean, why are you worried about me disparaging you if you didn't do anything wrong?
Exactly.
So I mean, why do I have to sign this? But the next cycle that we have to break,
Mm-hmm.
right, is coming from behind the shadows and saying, no. But for us, because of the generational gap in wealth in the years that have been taken away from us, we have to always think, I do have to eat. I do have to have somewhere to stay. I do have to have my basic necessities met. And sometimes that has to come first
Mm-hmm.
before you can fight that fight. But the more that we come out and we talk about it and we're willing to support each other in our next stages and our careers, the more we'll be able to give the next person the courage and the strength and the resources to say, no, I'm not signing that, and I will be public about what happened to me here in this place. And that coin per se won't matter as much because I won't need it for survival.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the beginning, if my people had been compensated for all the work that they did, and we had been able to build generational wealth, I wouldn't need the coin because I would already have something passive coming in by now, right?
Exactly.
Because we had our communities, but people decided to burn them down. We were doing stuff for ourselves. I could just have gone to my community. I could have gone to a Rosewood. I could have gone down where Lake Lanier now is. I could have gone out west, to Oklahoma. I could have gone to Black Wall Street. But you took those away from us. And so that we would have to be constrained in this system that you've built, that on surface you say one thing, but there's always this shadow force that's working behind and against us in this shadow docket that you don't share with anyone. So when we speak about it, we know is true, the microaggressions, the macro insult assaults, the sabotaging, the bullying, the isolation that's happening in the workplace. When those things happen to us and we speak about them, because they don't have something on the checklist in the manual to say, okay, they violated policy number 3, it doesn't exist. Or how do you prove it? Or it's your word against theirs. So, as long as we keep talking about it and we keep fighting it, something will eventually be done with it. And that's my overarching goal. Is I'm at a point in my life that I'm going to speak about it and I'm going to coach others who are having to go through this terrible time, unfortunately, so that they can pass it on and the next person will be able to speak a little louder. And I think that's the mentality that we all have to have as Black women right now. That is just, Angela Davis and that regime, they did their part. Now we got to
Exactly.
do our
Yeah.
part.
Yes, yes, and so I'm so happy that you pointed that out because there's a piece in your chapter where you mention when you say, despite breaking my family cycles, I found myself trapped in another system that demanded Black women be exceptional. However, we're still being overlooked. So we are continuously brought to the front when it comes time to fix a problem, but yet yanked to the back once the problem is solved. Throw us on out there, get everything situated. But no. You can't advance too much. Now, who do you think you are? Come back, come back, come back. And that's what we continue. That's what we continue to see. Like, we think about
Right.
right now what's going on with here in New York with Letitia James and how
Mhm.
she's being targeted despite all that she has gone through and all that she has accomplished. Like, it's as if her record doesn't mean anything because she was able to advance to a certain level. It's like, how dare you, Black girl? Let me now. I need to put you back in your place. And we're constantly seeing that with so many of our Black women who are in these elevated spaces, who have done the work, but we've made people uncomfortable. We've ruffled feathers, and so now people feel like they want to put us or in our place. So
Mhm.
in our place, so have you. And so it brings me to just understanding how, well, wanting the audience to understand how detrimental it is to making sure that you are being mindful about the way we approach things, right? And so it doesn't mean just because you're not jumping out to the front and just saying absolutely not. Like, our mind, there's bubbles over our head, right, in situations that are going off, but we have to recognize, like, yes, we still need our check. Yes, we still have mortgage to pay. Yes, we still have medical insurance. So we have to be mindful about the way we approach things,
Mhm.
and we have to respect those who are not as boisterous, or who do not have the capability or the bandwidth or the will, or not will, but the financial freedom to
Mhm.
just up and quit their job. And I feel like that's is something that we need to talk about, because
Mhm.
what we see this call to action that's happening, but then we also see this judgment that's
Mhm.
also happening, where it's like, you're not protesting in the way I feel you should be protesting, but we also don't live that person's life. So we have to be understanding and compassionate as we're building this resistance, as we're trying to make the change, shift these changes and all the things that are just happening, because we also know that we can't pack up and come live with you, right? So we have to be mindful. Yes, speak up. Yes, speak out, definitely, but also be mindful, and compassionate and understanding that your safety
Mhm.
is very important. Financial, emotional, and physical safety is very much important. But I want to talk to you, educating the educator. Let's get into it, because I was a former dean, and so I know that you was a dean as well in the leader of the school. So let's talk about how, when you were wearing that educational hat, right?
Mhm.
And at a time where you had suspensions, all turn low, expulsions, all turn low. The students were thriving, yet
Mhm.
you were still being questioned
Right.
about the way things were happening. And it wasn't about your ability, it wasn't about your competency, it was about minor things that
Mhm.
had nothing to do with the level of work that you was producing. And I want to bring that up because there's so many women of color who are facing that right now, right? And so, how were you able to navigate being told to make yourself smaller, literally and figuratively, just to keep a job that you were already excelling at? Like,
Right.
let's talk about that, because there's so many women who are experiencing that right now, men as well.
Yeah, true, true, true. I want so there's two parts here. So I want to address one of the things you just asked, and we definitely have to be strategic. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be strategic, and I must say, my 50-plus-year-old self is not as I am more strategic now than I was when I was a 35-year-old me. And with that comes wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get wisdom, you have to have what Ebony K. Williams in her book attributes to is you have to have your life board, right? So on my life board, you got to have people that are look like you and people that don't look like you. And
Mm-hmm.
those don't look like you people, you need to make sure that they're allies and they're in tune to what's happening in the shadow force, so that they can help prepare you, right? So that helped me build onto the internal fight that I already have, that you spoke to. Some people just don't have.
Mm-hmm.
But what they can do is look in the mirror and do their mirror work. And that mirror work consists of detoxing yourself from that white supremacy's structure and culture that you've been accustomed to. Because if you went to school in America, you've been indoctrinated with it. So you have to what looks like success to you, what society deems as what success is, you have to detox all of that and start to rebuild and retrain your mind, and it can be done. So just because you might not be able to speak out in your workplace because you may not be there financially or you may not have the
Mm-hmm.
internal fight in you, what you can do is your own work so that you won't subliminally make the same mistakes on paper or in meetings or in your interactions with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not perpetuating the system. That you can do. Everybody can do that.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing I want to do. Don't continue to keep perpetuating the damage.
Mm-hmm.
Stop it within you. Make sure that you're not, death by 1,000 cuts is still a death.
It's still a death. It's
Right.
still a death.
You're not putting in cut number 899. So the educational piece, as how did I get through that? Well, I'm going to tell you, I had that life board and I had to become the person that I wanted my two daughters to say, that's my mom. And she has taught me how to be this person. And I wanted them to be able to look at me and say, I don't have to look at anybody else because I have right here the best source, right? And I couldn't do that if I wasn't true to myself. How am I going to tell two little black girls, your beauty is beauty?
Mm-hmm.
Your hips are beauty. You don't have to let your beauty speak for you. Let your intellect speak for you. I can't do that if I'm not living it in real time. So that's one big driver for me. The other thing I will say is, and that was more of a motivation, I will say is that I took what people told me and I used their own system. If they were talking numbers, I started talking
Here
numbers.
we go.
Okay. If you were talking research, I had to start doing research. If just in one of my most recent articles, a sociologist, I think down in North Carolina somewhere, challenged one of my numbers and some verbiage I used. I had no problem with that. I came back the next day and spoke the numbers and with a correction. I have no problem with that. If you're pushing to make me better, I have no issue with that. What I have an issue with is you taking my stuff and not giving
Mm-hmm.
me credit for it,
Mm-hmm.
and then pushing me to the back and not giving me my due acknowledgement, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's in the rate of pay or just acknowledging this is the research of, or this is the idea of, Dr. Carrie. I had to start speaking up and out against the system. And it got to the place where I was a person that this teachers union decided to do a vote of no confidence in. And
Mm-hmm.
this was a person who reduced that rate of suspension amongst our black male special who had IEPs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and got you off the state watch list, but you wanted to go and say you didn't have confidence in what? Confidence in making you feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. And at that time, in which is a member of my board, Dr. Chris Cluette, who I still in contact with today, he is the one who, the white male on my board, who actually spoke life into, this is the way you can navigate things. He is the one who came out in the paper and said, you know what, Dr. McWilliams, I want you to know that you're doing exactly what I hired you to do. And that's all I really needed. Was
Mm-hmm.
it easy to go into a building where someone has done the vote of no confidence in you? Absolutely not. But I had to be there for students because they needed to see that someone believed in them and knew that they could do what wasn't expected of them, because it was all about expectations.
Yes.
And again, I saw my students as my children.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way that I cared for them, and that's the way that I spoke to them. And if I expected you to be at school, I expect you to be at school. If I expected you to use some type of vernacular when you were communicating with adults versus when you're communicating with students, that was the expectation. And I think in our K-12 system now, um, it has become just so passive because people are so afraid of having relationships with students, appropriate relationships with students where there's a mentor mentee relationship, right? And so many of our parents are so young, and they are relying on the experiences that they have had in school, which for many of them were very negative. But you got to bring everybody into the fold. You got to educate mom and dad while you educating the child sometimes, because they can only draw back on the experiences that they've had. That's all that they have to draw on. And you have to speak to them and listen, right? Sometimes we just need to be quiet and listen so that you can empathize and see where people are coming from. You can't always have the answers, because they have the answers. They know what makes them function the best and what is going to work for their families. And sometimes we just do not do that as educators. And I know, because I've been one of those educators. I have had to go into a all Portuguese community, being the only black person in the whole school running the school. I had to listen to the Portuguese community. I didn't know anything about Portugal. So, so I had to listen and learn about their culture so that I could communicate and have build relationships with them.
Mm-hmm.
If I came in there trying to put my black Southern culture on their community, that wasn't going to work. But that's what's been happening to black communities all over the place.
Time and again, and we noticed that, and I'm so happy that you pointed that out, because it brought me back to a memory of when I was a dean, and it was plenty of time. That was one of my biggest things, was building relationships, not only with the students but also with their families, because I when I was an educator, my root into my why was, I always wanted to be the type of educator that I wish I would have had growing up, but also I wanted to be the type of educator that I hope that my child had while he was at school. So I would not treat anyone else's child any way other than the way I would want my child to be treated. So there have been times where I have left the school building, walked across the street to a student house, and got that student from their house, like, I'm on the phone with your mother. She said that
Right,
she sent you out this morning. You need to come downstairs. You're coming to school. I've
right.
been an educator who has donated Xboxes and PlayStations to students as raffles for them, as an incentive to change behavior.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Stay late in the evening to like 8 p.m. just to give parents that couldn't get off of work an opportunity to come and stay
Exactly
in
the
meetings,
plan.
whether it's in face or whether it's virtual, so I didn't have to suspend their child.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been on both sides. I've been on
Right.
both sides of where, like, defending teachers, but
Mm-hmm,
also making sure that families didn't feel mistreated and students'
mm-hmm.
voices didn't feel muted. And which that's something that often happens so much in the school,
Right.
because you have a lot of educators who just feel like, this is the way I grew up, and these are my expectations, and this is my background. This is how culturally
Absolutely.
I do it. So I'm gonna force my culture and my beliefs and my, my history and how I grew up on you, and you just have to like it because you're a child. And so that's
Exactly.
when you continuously see that clash. So I wanted to talk to you about that because that's something that we definitely share. But then it's also we share this piece of like betrayal that
Mhm.
often happens.